very, very unfair and very damaging for our economy in the months to come.
And you don't all have to answer each point. If you want to pick it up, just briefly, if you
Just to come in on that point, I mean, I think a stronger role for local government, yes, and particularly on housing. And this point, I think, does illustrate Labour's failure to listen to people. For 10 years in government, Labour councillors were saying to the leadership of our party, build more council housing. There's a real problem at local level. And I'm afraid we were not listening to people at the grassroots in our party. And we should have built more homes because, for me, that was a big issue in the south of England at the last election. And more than anything, it drove concerns around immigration.
The man in the grey T-shirt there.
Had the panel realised that Tony Blair was wrong years ago, perhaps the country would be in a better position now.
You mean, had they got rid of him?
Yes.
Do any of you think you should have got rid of him earlier? There were a lot of flirtations with
the reality, Tony Blair was going from 2004. But it took some time, and it was, in the end, a rather destabilising process for everybody. The fact is, the Labour Party came out of that period united, not divided, and that's actually, I think, a tribute to the way, in the end, it was handled in the last few years.
But you came out of this as somebody who was trying to undermine Tony Blair, according to the memoirs we're having at the moment, from Mandelson and...
You've been reading these memoirs. Look, the truth was...
Oh, the truth not in the memoirs? You're full of bile, or you hover between the irritating and the rude.
Look, I'm afraid, there were some people in the country who had the same reaction at certain points. But the fact was, the disagreements I had with Tony Blair were never about bile and personal disagreement. But I thought, for example, that the use of private capital in the health service in the second term was a mistake. And I also thought that joining the single currency, the euro, was a mistake. I had that argument with him. I wasn't hugely popular with him at the time, but to be honest, I think I was right and he was wrong on that one. And he's now said in his memoirs, I wasn't in touch with aspiration. I think, to be honest, the introduction of tuition fees showed that he had lost touch with aspiration in the end, and that was a problem for him, not for
David,
me.
can I just come back?
Yes,
just to that gentleman. I think it's really important to say, I've been quite critical of our record, but I'm proud of many of the things that we did. The minimum wage, tax credits, the schools rebuilt, the hospitals rebuilt.
But do you think they should have got rid of Blair?
No, I don't. No,
OK,
I don't
well, that's the answer. Let's stick to one point at a time. Very briefly, Diane Abbott, do you think one of these fellows should have got rid of him earlier? Did you want to see him go?
I didn't vote for him in the first place.
No, but did you want to see him go?
No, but my point is this, that, I mean, we've had a great leadership campaign, nearly 10 weeks, but I've listened with some bafflement to my rivals say, the government did this wrong, the government did that wrong, the government was out of touch. They were all in government. I don't know when they woke up to all that was going wrong, because I certainly on the back benches didn't hear it at the time.
OK, well, maybe if you've been in government, it would be different. Now, let's stick with a serious point about the direction Labour takes. Vinay Nair has a question. Let me just take that, please.
Thanks. Earlier today, The Economist endorsed David Miliband so as to prevent a lurch to the left. Could such a lurch provide a victory in the Labour leadership race, but defeat in the general election?
If Labour goes left, you may win the leadership, but you'll lose the general election. That's the nub of that question. Who'd like to go first on that?
Well, I don't think... Yes, I don't think that anybody is talking about a lurch to the left, quite frankly. I think that what some of us are talking about is bringing the Labour Party closer to ordinary people. It's not a lurch to the left to say that tuition fees were a terrible burden and put off a lot of working class young people. It's not a lurch to the left to say that scrapping the 10p tax rate was the wrong thing to do. And it's not actually a lurch to the left to say we should be abolishing the Trident nuclear missile system. All the generals are calling for that. So it's not a lurch to the left. It's getting us more in the centre, frankly, after the Blair years.
David Miliband, the Economist endorsed you, and by implication said that Ed Miliband was in effect a lurch to the left that would lose an election. Do you think the Economist was right?
Well, look, the person I want to beat...
Can you answer the question?
I am. The person I want to beat is David Cameron. It's not the people sitting on this platform. The issue that we have to address is how we're going to have a Labour Party that can not just be a fighting opposition, but can be an alternative government, that can stand up to the current government, but also ensure that come the next election, we never again have a manifesto that doesn't inspire, that doesn't have the new ideas, that isn't able to motivate people all around the country. And I think what has been very, very striking about this election is I have unified the party from Dennis Skinner on the left to Alistair Darling. I've unified people because I've talked about the needs of the country in the future.
David Miliband,
that is the absolutely key thing.
Yeah, David, can you come to the key point about this? The allegation, or the assertion, put it like that, in The Economist, by implication, is that you, compared with the other candidates, have a centrist position. You're closer to David Cameron, and you therefore might win the leadership, but you may risk losing. You would win the leadership that way, sorry, but whereas Ed Miliband, for instance, moving the party to the left, will lose.
Well, I'm going to make no apologies for saying I'm out to win a general election. We have got to get a Labour government back that can run this country for a genuinely moral economy and to build the good society.
Do you see yourself as the most centrist of the five candidates?
I see myself as the candidate who can not just define and occupy the centre ground, but can shift it in a progressive direction, because I've shown in every job I've got an ability to turn my values into real change in people's lives, whether it be on the education system and the Building Schools for the Future programme, whether it be in local government, devolving power in the way that the gentleman was saying, or in foreign affairs, standing up for British values around the world.
Ed Miliband, are you to the left of your brother, would you say?
I don't think these labels particularly help.
The Economist have used it as a way of endorsing him for the leadership.
The idea that we're going to let the Economist define what Labour Party members and the general electorate decide is frankly nonsense. The idea that my candidacy is a lurch left is nonsense as well. But I have been talking about how we need to change. We do need to reach out to the working class voters that we lost at the general election because we took them for granted for too long. We do need to change key aspects of our policy. And we do need to have a debate about millions of people in this country who are working long hours for low pay. And frankly, I will say that trade unions have a role to play in helping those people. That's not a lurch to the left. That is about recognising how we need to define the political ground in this country. And frankly, I think that is the best strategy to beat David Cameron. Because unless we change, I tell you this, David, unless we change as a political party, this is the lesson of history. Unless we change profoundly in all the areas I've talked about in this campaign, we will not win back power. Tony Blair said after 1992, the problem was we haven't changed enough. I don't want that to happen after the next general election.
Peter Mandelson, who was very close to Tony Blair and won those 3 elections with him.
He was close to me at one point as well, actually, I think.
Was he indeed? Well, probably not now. He says of you that you or anyone else who wants to create what he calls a pre-New Labour future will quickly find they've run into an electoral cul-de-sac.
But this is the point.
We're not looking for a preacher.
I'm not the candidate of the New Labour establishment, but I'm afraid Peter Mandelson is stuck in the past. Because Peter Mandelson would say, well, the problem was we were probably too tough on the banks, or we shouldn't have raised the top rate of tax on those over £150,000. Actually, we were too slow to recognise the anger there was about bankers' bonuses, and that's what made people think we weren't on their side, and that's why we have to change.
Let me just... a number of people want to ask questions. Let me just go to the other 2 candidates. Ed Balls, first of all, the line was that a lurch to the left would be the result of anybody except David Miliband becoming leader, and that a lurch to the left would be an electoral disaster.
Look, in the election campaign, nobody ever said you aren't left enough. To be honest, nobody in the election campaign never said to me either, you need to put your values centre stage. What they said was, why are the housing queues long? And why aren't there more jobs for young people? And why are you making it harder for our kids to get to university? And why do we feel that we're working hard and other people aren't working as hard and are still getting support from the welfare state? And those are things actually which transcend left and right. And what we've got to do, to be honest, if we carry on this leadership election having a debate about whose comfort zone are we in, this is totally out of touch with the electorate. The real lurch to the left happened in 1979. We went into the wilderness for 18 years because we talked to ourselves. We won when we started talking to the country about the issues which matter to them. And that's what I've been trying to do through this leadership election, about the houses we should build, the jobs we should create, the public spending we need to protect. Those are the things which actually matter in our communities, and those are the things Labour voters want us to be talking about, in my view.
I'll take a question and you can answer it, OK?
Well, I wanted to answer that question, like everybody else.
The man there in purple.
Well, I couldn't answer that one.
Well, you can, but I just want to try and bring the audience in as much as I can. Yes, you, sir.
Ed Miliband mentioned the London Citizens' campaign for the living wage. I don't believe that is a lurch to the left, bearing in mind that David Cameron and Boris Johnson have already supported that. The question is whether or not the other candidates are going to support it and bring it into law.
Andy Burnham.
Well, yes, we do. And I think the discussion we've just had, though, embodies Labour's problem. We've got to get away from this debate about old Labour versus new Labour. We've got to move into a new era now. I think on the panel, I best speak for mainstream Labour. Get back to being the Labour Party and have the courage of our convictions again to put forward ideas that will make this society that we live in fairer, bring a fairer spread of health, wealth and life chances. The problem with New Labour, was that it became frightened of its own shadow, unable to put ideas forward for fear of what the newspapers might say. Well, Labour can't be there anymore. Labour's got to know what it believes in, where its priorities are. We've got to put forward those big ideas that will change this country for the better. I've spoken in this campaign about a national care service free at the point of use, because I believe that could be for Labour in this century of the ageing society what the NHS was for Labour in the last century. We have got to get back in the business of those big, inspiring ideas that will lift